Welcome to a journey through the shadows of the human mind. Find a comfortable position. Let your breathing slow. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Tonight, we'll explore the hidden mechanisms that shape our thoughts, our choices, and our connections with others. These are not things to fear, but rather truths to understand. Some of what you'll hear may surprise you. Some may feel familiar. All of it exists within the landscape of human psychology. Let the words wash over you. There's no need to remember everything. Just listen and drift. How the mind is quietly shaped. We begin with a question that has troubled philosophers for centuries. How free are we really? A large share of our decisions happens unconsciously. And yet, the mind invents reasons afterward to feel in control. Think about the last choice you made today. The reason you believe you made it may have been written by your mind after the fact. People often confabulate, weaving stories to explain choices driven by nothing more than gut feelings. Your mood influences your decisions far more than you believe. A cloudy morning can reshape the trajectory of your day. When information is ambiguous, the mind interprets it in ways that protect self-image. We are natural storytellers, especially when the story is about ourselves. Cognitive distortions subtly reshape reality to preserve self-esteem. What we see is not always what is there. Consider this. Familiar ideas feel more true simply because they are repeated. This is called the illusory truth effect. Repetition can make false statements feel true over time. Say something enough, and the mind begins to accept it. Confirmation bias pushes us to seek validating information and ignore contradictions. We search not for truth, but for agreement. And here's something fascinating. When lies align with our worldview, they are remembered as facts, even after correction. Strong emotions can rewrite memories, increasing confidence while reducing accuracy. The more certain you feel, the less reliable the memory may be. False memories can form through suggestion and repetition. What you remember from childhood may never have happened at all. Leading questions can change how events are remembered. The way a question is asked shapes the answer that follows. Inattentional blindness allows obvious details to be missed when focus is manipulated. You can look directly at something and not see it. Information overload paralyzes decision-making and increases reliance on familiar sources. Too many choices become no choice at all. And finally, people overestimate their ability to detect deception. We believe we can read lies, but most of us cannot. The mind, it seems, is not the fortress we imagined. Biases that open the door. Now we move deeper into the subtle hooks that draw us toward others. Social mimicry makes people like those who mirror them. When someone copies your gestures, your posture, you feel understood. Repeating someone's name and personal details increases trust. It signals attention. It signals care. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they overshare, filling the void with secrets. Flattery works, even when suspected to be fake. The mind wants to believe it, and so it does. Attractive people benefit from something called the halo effect. We assume they are kinder, smarter, more trustworthy. Beauty becomes a lens. Negativity bias makes fear-based messaging more persuasive. The brain remembers danger better than safety. A warning lingers longer than praise. Loss aversion means losses feel worse than gains feel good. The pain of losing $20 outweighs the joy of finding 20. Scarcity increases perceived value and urgency. When something is rare, we want it more. Time-limited offers exploit this truth. FOMO, the fear of missing out, drives impulsive decisions. The thought of being left behind can override reason. Framing effects change choices based on whether they're presented as gains or losses. The same option, described differently, feels entirely new. People trust confidence more than accuracy. A certain voice, even when wrong, is more persuasive than a hesitant truth. And here's a quiet admission most won't make. People nod along to ideas they don't understand to avoid embarrassment. These are the first hooks, small, subtle, effective. How resistance weakens. The third layer is where individual will begins to bend. People conform to group norms, even when they are clearly wrong. In experiments, participants deny what their eyes show them to match the group. Social proof overrides personal judgment. If everyone else is doing it, it must be right. Or so the mind believes. The bystander effect reduces personal responsibility. When many are present, each person assumes someone else will act. And so no one does. Authority figures dramatically increase obedience, even against morals. A uniform, a title, a tone of command can make good people do terrible things. People tolerate unfair treatment from high-status individuals more than from equals. Power grants permission. Foot-in-the-door techniques escalate compliance gradually. A small request opens the door to larger ones. Each yes makes the next one easier. Door-in-the-face tactics work in reverse. An outrageous demand makes the real request seem reasonable by comparison. The illusion of choice hides manipulation behind options. When all paths lead to the same place, the choosing itself becomes meaningless. Vague, shifting rules keep people anxious and compliant. If the boundaries are never clear, no one knows when they've crossed them. Strategic pauses and tone make weak arguments feel important. Silence can carry more weight than words. Overwhelming detail can force agreement through exhaustion. When the explanation is too complex to follow, people simply give in. Threats are often implied rather than spoken. The most effective warnings are the ones never stated aloud. And finally, pruning dissent creates false unanimity. Remove the doubters, and what remains looks like agreement. Resistance is more fragile than we think. Control through attachment. Now we enter perhaps the most difficult territory, the heart and how it can be weaponized. Love bombing lowers defenses through intense early affection. It feels like destiny, like finally being seen. But it's a strategy. Mirroring values creates a false soulmate connection. They like what you like, they dream what you dream, until they don't. Intermittent reinforcement deepens emotional addiction. Unpredictable rewards create stronger bonds than consistent ones. The gambler and the hopeful lover are not so different. Trauma bonding forms in volatile relationships. Intense highs and lows create a chemical dependency that feels like love. Alternating kindness and cruelty creates dependency. The relief when kindness returns becomes its own reward. Silent treatment functions as emotional punishment. Withdrawal of presence can hurt more than any words. Guilt-tripping exploits empathy. Your care for them becomes the tool they use against you. Jealousy can be deliberately triggered to increase attachment. The fear of losing them keeps you holding tighter. Low-level criticism slowly erodes self-esteem. Not enough to leave, but enough to doubt yourself. death by 1,000 small cuts. Apologies may reset abuse cycles without accountability. I'm sorry becomes a reset button while nothing actually changes. Pseudo-help creates dependence disguised as support. They offer to fix you so you'll believe you're broken. Boundaries are mirrored early, then slowly violated. They respect your limits until you're invested. Then the lines begin to blur. Highly empathetic people are often targeted. Your ability to feel deeply becomes an access point, and people raised in chaos may confuse intensity with love. If home was volatile, peace might feel like indifference. The heart is powerful, but it can also be profoundly vulnerable. The fifth layer involves the power of the group and the danger of being cut off from it. Some abusers isolate victims from friends and family. One by one, the connections fade, until only one voice remains. Emotional contagion spreads moods through groups. One person's fear becomes everyone's fear. Collective emotion is amplified emotion. Identity dissolution makes disagreeing feel like betrayal. When the group becomes your identity, questioning it questions yourself. Groups normalize abuse by slowly shifting standards. What was once unthinkable becomes acceptable, then expected. Moral superiority justifies cruelty to outsiders. If we are righteous, then they deserve what they get. Charged language dehumanizes targets. Once someone is labeled, they are no longer fully human. And what you do to them no longer fully counts. Scapegoating unites followers while hiding leadership failure. When there's a common enemy, internal problems disappear from view. Public shaming warns others not to dissent. The punishment is visible so that others learn to stay silent. Permanent crisis narratives justify extreme control. If the threat never ends, neither does the authority. Rumors are seeded to create lasting doubt. Even when disproven, the suspicion remains. Us versus them rhetoric reframes harm as loyalty. Hurting them becomes protecting us, and powerlessness increases attraction to extremist ideologies. When nothing else feels controllable, absolute answers become appealing. In groups, we are stronger, but also more susceptible. Not all manipulation is strategic. Sometimes, it's simply who someone is. Machiavellian individuals view people as tools. Every relationship is transactional. Every conversation has a purpose. Narcissists appear charming before empathy gaps emerge. They shine brightly until you need them, then nothing. Psychopathic traits include charm without remorse. They can simulate warmth, but never truly feel it. Dark triad traits, Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, are often well masked. The most dangerous are the hardest to spot. Some individuals find exploitation psychologically rewarding. It's not always calculated. Sometimes it simply feels good. Harmful behavior can escalate like an addiction. Each time, the threshold moves. What once felt extreme becomes normal. Dark traits may be rewarded in competitive environments. In some settings, ruthlessness is called leadership. Manipulators study emotions to exploit them. They learn empathy not to feel it, but to use it. Some mimic empathy without feeling it. They've learned the script. They know the right words. But the feeling behind them is absent. Moral codes are studied to better hide violations. They learn the rules, so they know exactly which ones to break and when. Compartmentalization protects self-image. They can do harm and still see themselves as good. The two selves never meet. Lack of guilt does not prevent harm. Only consequences do. Without internal restraint, only external pressure matters. And here's something important to understand. Many tactics are learned by being victimized first. The abused sometimes become abusers. Hurt people hurt people. These personalities exist, not in movies, but in real life, often in plain sight. The final trap, and now perhaps the most painful question: why do people stay? Cognitive dissonance rationalizes harmful choices. The mind cannot hold two conflicting truths, so it rewrites one of them. Sunk cost fallacy keeps people trapped. I've invested so much already. I can't leave now. Time becomes a chain. Effort justification makes suffering feel worthwhile. If I suffered this much, it must mean something. It must be worth it. Familiar suffering feels safer than uncertainty. The known pain is less frightening than the unknown freedom. Projection deflects blame onto others. They accuse you of what they're doing. And in the confusion, you begin to doubt yourself. Labeling distorts how all future actions are perceived. Once you're crazy or difficult, everything you do is filtered through that lens. People cling to toxic systems to preserve identity. Leaving would mean admitting it was all wrong, and that feels impossible. Manipulators exaggerate favors to create debt. A small kindness becomes an unpayable obligation. Fear amplification creates dependence on protection. They create the danger, then offer themselves as the solution. Repression intensifies emotional vulnerability. Push feelings down long enough, and when they surface, they overwhelm everything. Self-deception masks exploitation as realism. This is just how relationships are. Everyone goes through this, but do they? And here's the truth that's hardest to accept. Manipulation often feels invisible from the inside. You don't see the cage until you try to leave. People stay not because they're weak, but because the trap was well designed. We've traveled far tonight through the shadows of the human psyche. Learning psychology can itself be weaponized. Knowledge is a tool, and like any tool, it can build or destroy. Some harm is goal-driven, some is purposeless. Not all damage is intentional, but that doesn't make it hurt less. Dark psychology exists on a continuum in everyone. We all have the capacity. The question is, what we choose to do with it. But here's the most important truth of all. Awareness is the first real defense. To see the mechanisms is to begin to free yourself from them. To understand the game is to stop playing unconsciously. These facts are not meant to frighten you. They're meant to illuminate, to show you what was always there. The mind is vast, complex, capable of extraordinary beauty and extraordinary deception, but you are not helpless. Understanding is power. Awareness is armor. As you drift now into sleep, let these truths settle. Not as fears, but as knowledge. Tomorrow you'll wake with clearer eyes. Rest now. You're safe. You're aware. And that makes all the difference. Good night.